Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Above the Bar podcast, where each week we belly up to the bar with a new guest, find out what they do, who they are, and what makes them great. So sit back, relax, and enjoy.
Alrighty, folks, it's your host, Sean. It's the Above the Bar podcast. It is Wednesday. I forgot what day is. October 9th. I'll tell you something right there. I'm in a whole nother planet right at this moment. Even forgot to pull my mic down. Well, if you're on the live side of things right now, hopefully our guest, Dr. Drew, will be able to make it here in just a moment. This is not the Dr. Drew that tells you about Loveline and what to do with your pee-pee and all those kind of things. This is Dr. Drew Miller. For those of you that already popped on our live, I appreciate it. This is Dr. Drew Miller that'll be joining us. He's in an airport somewhere right now. He said, "Oh, wait a sec. Look at that. There he is, looking stylish.
Looking like I'm at McDonald's."
Listen, hey, you can have your Happy Meal, and I could do like the whole intro. Joining us from McDonald's Unknown. See, this is part of survival. Where can I find things? How can I get there? How can I make it happen? This is all part of it. Joining us from a McDonald's in some airport somewhere in parts unknown, it's Dr. Drew Miller.
I'm glad to be here, and I'm going to grab my headphones so I can hear
Yep.
you.
Well, you get yourself situated, Doc, and I'll get us going here. We'll get some of the regular stuff out of the way. As always, folks, over my right shoulder is the big board for Sticker and a Cause. You got something you're supporting, something you're believing in, something you've got happening. You can reach out to us on Facebook, LinkedIn, YouTube, Twitch, Twitter, X, Instagram, TikTok. Our website is the abovethebarpodcast.com, and our email is abovethebarpodcast@gmail.com. Let us know what you got going on. Send all your stuff to. We get links from the big board. Some kids, shut up. Go find the playground and shut up. There's a show going on. Can you hear me, Doc?
Yes, I can.
Okay. So we got that. And as always, folks, we got to talk about our sponsors. That's Budget Blinds of East Greenbush and Budget Blinds of Hudson and Coxsackie, New York. And they just added in Budget Blinds of Sherry, New York. So we're covering all over that mid-section of New York here. They are your number one company for window treatments, whether you're looking for blinds, shutters, shades, drapery, whatever it is, they can help you out. Maybe you're prepping. Look, we're going to keep with the whole theme. Maybe you're prepping for summertime or you're prepping for guests. You should reach out to them, see what they've got going on. If you tell them you're there to belly up to the bar this month, they're at 25% off your entire order. You tell them you're there to belly up to the bar, they're going to give you another 5% off your entire order. 30% off your whole order. Budget Blinds of East Greenbush, Budget Blinds of Hudson and Coxsackie, and Budget Blinds of New York. All right, Doc. Doc, look at those kids that are next to you, wherever they're at. Tell them, look, I'm hosting a show right now.
They're not. I don't know if I can be that loud, but there's background music playing. I apologize for that.
I'm kidding, Doc. I can hear the kids, but as I will. Where are we traveling from right now, Doc?
I'm flying I just flew from Fortitude Ranch, Nevada, which is out in the desert, but we have 5 springs, so it's okay for us to be in the desert. And I'm now in Central Texas, heading to Fortitude Ranch, Texas tomorrow.
You headed to your ranch, right?
Yeah, well, I float between Texas and Colorado, end up at all of our locations. And you're in New York. We've got a franchise location in the Catskills.
Really? That's where Budget Blinds of Hudson and Coxsackie is. We cover the Catskills.
Very good. Beautiful area.
What part of the Catskills is it at?
I'd have to look. Well, I couldn't tell you because we keep our location. I mean, we don't get more specific than that. Our members know if you're coming for a tour, you'll find out. But other than that, we don't post locations. But I want to clarify: we don't post our locations, but we tell everyone in a collapse. If you think you're going to hide, you're delusional. If you're alive and you survive a long collapse, marauders will find you. I mean, you have to run a generator. You have to have solar panels. Sooner or later, you're going to give yourself away that you're there. So you have to be able to defend yourself. So we do not rely on secrecy at Fortitude Ranch to survive. We rely on guns. All of our members have weapons. Staff has weapons. We have guard post defensive positions, so we will defend our members, our chickens, all our animals, our fields, and everything. We'll make it through.
Well, it's funny you say that. I was going through the internet, and you guys have a very small internet presence. Also, I noticed that when I was trying to find stuff on you and everything, as far as like tagging you in posts. But I was reading one off of Instagram where some fool was like, "Oh, I know where I'm going now to get all my stuff because you told me where you're at." And all I could think to myself was, "Hey there, genius guy. If they're willing to tell you, like, hey, this is us, this is what we've got, they're probably also willing to put a leaky spot in your body so that they can keep what they have." So,
well, we have plans for marauders. I mean, I don't think we'll actually be attacked because when you've got 100+ people with arms, you've got cleared lines of fire, walls, guard posts, any marauder group, and their goal is to, they're not Marines like you. They're right. Marauders, their goal is to stay alive. So, they're not going to attack us. They'll go after easy targets. If they do come after us, I can tell you what we do with them. They will become feed for our chickens. We'll do shallow bury of dead marauders where our chickens free range, and they'll produce a lot of wonderful bugs. So we're not gonna do cannibalism, and eat dead marauders, but we are going to shallow bury them where they'll quickly produce bugs that our chickens will eat. So we'll still get a good caloric value from dead marauders.
I mean, you got to do what you got to do. Well, I want to roll this back a little bit. So a little bit of background on you, and we didn't get a ton of time to talk beforehand, Doc, but you were retired now. I'm going to take a shot in the dark.
Yes.
Air Force or Chair, as a Marine, I'm going to call you Chair Force Colonel. I mean, I just got to.
That's fair. But, I mean, I flew in chairs and desks most of the time.
But so you're retired from there. You have a couple of locations for it. I remember when you guys sent me the stuff. You've got a couple different Marines that are with you. You've got people in different areas. So it's not just you having people come out to the ranch and being like, hey, this is, what we do. You've got different trainers, different people that can teach different things, different opportunities. But what I'm curious about is, how did you even get to this point where you were like, yeah, you know what, I'm gonna go ahead and teach this, or this is something I need to do?
Well, I was an intelligence officer, so I've always been very well aware of the threats. And when the Soviet Union fell, I can remember people saying, well, that's it. We're safe now. There'll never be nuclear war. Things will be nice. And I thought, you're out of your mind. Threat levels are going to keep rising. I won't say exponentially, but they're definitely going up because of new technologies, because of the fact that there aren't just two superpowers now. There's, three big ones with nuclear weapons. There's more and more countries getting nuclear weapons. Iran has assessed that they could get them in 3 months, but that's an estimate. As an intelligence officer, I can tell you it's very possible Iran has nuclear weapons right now and has had them for months. We just can't be that accurate or knowledgeable of it. So there are going to be more and more powers with nuclear weapons. With artificial intelligence, I guarantee you, there will be more nuclear weapons. We're still thinking the only way to develop a nuclear weapon is with the centrifuge technology we did back in the 1940s. Well, guess what? You can use laser enrichment. And with AI, artificial intelligence, you'll find more and more ways to make nuclear weapons, just like it's easier to make a new virus, bioengineer a virus that's highly transmissible, highly lethal. And so, there's so much to be aware of. That's why I've got Collapse Survivor as my label there. We formed this app called Collapse Survivor because there's so much, as you know, so much to know about prepping and survival and your options, and then so many threats. Well, the Collapse Survivor app gives you all kinds of preparedness, threat, survival information and education. Plus, we do weekly exercises like you and I used to do when we were in the military. But the other thing this app does is it gives you real threat alerts. We used to alert our members at Fortitude Ranch, by phone, email, or text. We don't anymore. We use the Collapse Survivor app, and that's how we push out our threat alerts to members. So we did a threat alert, for example, on the H5N1 virus. Just a few weeks ago, because the CDC, Center for Disease Control, is absolutely lying to the American people. They say H5N1 is a low risk. That's the most
it's bird flu,
utterly
right?
wrong. Pardon?
Is that bird flu?
Yes, it used to be called bird flu. I tell people don't call it avian or bird flu anymore. It's spreading in hundreds of mammal populations around the world. It is infecting humans periodically now without going through an animal.
Well,
it will eventually become a H5N1 virus that is going to be a contagious pandemic. It's about 60% lethal historically, and it's going to kill you. So as I was saying, with this app, that's threat alerts, and those will push out to your phone. So if you download the Collapse Survivor app and then subscribe, when there's a real threat alert, like we believe H5N1 is now spreading, it's going to be a pandemic, we will push an alert to your phone. You can read it. Well, but this is one we did on solar flares back in May. There was a solar flare in May. There's a couple days warning, and we put out this alert saying, look, it's probably not going to destroy the electric grid. In theory, it could. The best information we found at the time was that there's a 10% chance of some grid damage. And we thought, well, we ought to let people know that. Right. The government didn't let you know that, did they? Well, we did. That's what the Collapse Survivor app does. So it's education and awareness, but most important, we'll send out threat alerts. The government isn't going to warn you until it's too late.
Well, I want to kind of roll back to it for a second. So in the Marine Corps, we'd have called you an O2 intel officer. You did those kind of things. But a lot of people will, and this is something I love having you on here, because my first ever live guest was a woman who did prepping, and she did it more at a family level, like, hey, how do you get your family together? How do you get yourself together? We live in a world currently where if you're in California, you got wildfires, you got earthquakes. Here on the East Coast, obviously, and everybody knows with Milton going through Florida right now, or maybe it's on the other side at this point. Milton going through Florida right now, these big storms. The nuclear threat, those type of like overarching anarchistic, the world as we've known it, for everyone coming to an end. Those are larger scale things. But that more localized, to me, and you correct me if I'm wrong, that more localized incident is much more realistic for most of us. Even if you're where I'm at in the capital region of New York, a big snowstorm shutting out power, ice storm taking power out, and being without power for 3 to 5 days, those are much more realistic for average person on a day-to-day.
I would have agreed with you earlier. I don't agree with you anymore, because we just finished up with a probability of collapse model. I developed it over a decade ago. It presented it at the Military Operations Research Society. It's an accurate model. It does, first of all, it estimates what is the likelihood of a disaster trigger event. It could be a really widespread hurricane. It could be a Yellowstone blows up. It could be nuclear war. It could be a pandemic. We track 50 different disaster trigger events with this disaster preparedness threat model. But it's not just does the trigger event happen. The more important thing really is, does it escalate? Does it expand to a wider area? Does law and order break down as a result? And you could have, I'm going to jump around a little bit, but in 2011 in the United Kingdom, they had what I would call a collapse. And you know what the trigger event was?
What's that?
There was none. It just started. In London, they attacked some policemen, and it started spreading on social media, and all across London that night, they had widespread vandalism, looting. People were killed defending their businesses. And the next morning, people woke up and said, what in the F was that? What caused that? And the answer was nothing. It just started. But the thing was, the next day, it started up again, violence at night, not just in London. It went to big cities across the United Kingdom. That went on for 4 nights until they called up all the police reserve, and they finally got it shut down. California, they have open flash mobs there's no cause. Portland, Oregon, from Baltimore to Portland, we've seen instances where all it takes is a couple hundred people start protesting, and law and order can break down. There simply aren't enough policemen. So back to your point, is the most likely collapse thing you're going to have, or disaster you're going to have, will be local. I used to agree with you. I don't anymore. We updated this model. Our latest estimate is that the annual likelihood of a collapse is low is 16% chance, high is 57% chance. So I think today you're more likely to face a nationwide level collapse event than you are, a horrible blizzard that threatens your life. I think you're more threatened today from artificial intelligence, bioengineering, nuclear war, civil war, and the list just keeps going on and on.
Well, the AI thing, I definitely want to get into that. I am going to kind of throw one at you. And I don't, personally, Doc, I kind of already know probably where you're going to go with this, but I don't care how people vote. But kind of filling in that January 6th element that we all talk about, that January 6th element into this. Come November 6th, we find out that Trump doesn't win. For whatever the reasoning is, he doesn't win. Is that in your opinion? Because in my personal opinion, based on watching January 6th, that's the next possible national disaster is, people who just can't accept that, hey, our nation has a peaceful transfer of power. Somebody said, it's the AI, it's the other thing. Doc, grab those kids that are yelling around you. Grab all those kids that are yelling. Snatch every one of them up. Just snatch them up.
I can try and move into a different area. Let's do that. I'm going to go mobile here.
We're going. See, this is why you have to be mobile.
It's not just Marines. Marines aren't the only one who can redeploy. The Air Force, we can move too. It just takes us a lot longer, and we got the golf course issues to handle.
Well, that's, I appreciate listen, I'll tell you a quick story why Doc's finding a good spot to sit down. I was in California, and young Marine, Lance Corporal. I don't even remember why I was out there. Maybe I was a corporal even. But my first ever Air Force base. And while at this Air Force base, they put us up in these rooms. I had a queen size bed. I had my own bathroom.
That's nice. We don't have foxholes, so we don't know what those are.
No. We don't either in the Marine Corps. We call them fighting holes because foxes hide, Marines don't. We go through all this thing. We find this absolutely amazing room that they put us up in, and then I say to my roommate, I'm like, "Is this like officer housing or something?" And he lets me know that no, this is regular enlisted, and it was condemned housing, like they were closing this base. The Air Force was closing this base down. This was like right after BRAC, Base Relocation and Closure Act. Yeah. And all I could think to myself was like, I live in a building where at one point in time I had cockroaches everywhere. And the only thing I could do to survive the cockroaches was I had to figure out where their nest was and scrub my own building down. So, but now as Doc's in a little bit quieter spot, back to my original question is, we've got the election coming up. I personally think that is our next, if Trump doesn't win, I think there's going to be plenty of whack jobs out there that think, well, I'm going to take over my local government. We hear about January 6th. We completely miss the fact that there were people that tried to kidnap the governor of Michigan and hold her hostage. Like, I don't know if many people remember that, but with scenarios like that, how should, from a basic 3 to 5 days that we used to talk about, how should people be prepared? And what are your thoughts? 2 parts. How should people be prepared? And what are your thoughts? Is that a real scenario?
Yeah, it absolutely is. Again, I said we just updated our probability of collapse model. The number one leading collapse threat now is the Civil War in terms of likelihood. Now, I got to differentiate between a trigger event and an actual collapse. Ray Dalio, who's the founder of Bridgewater, one of the biggest, most successful, he's made his fortune by predicting the future. His estimate is we have over a 50% chance of Civil War at this level, over 50%. But again, that's the trigger event. Is it likely to be a civil war that leads to a collapse? We don't think so. Our estimate is the likelihood that the Civil War is so bad, so violent that it leads to a breakdown in law and order and the economy not functioning. That's how we define a collapse, is only about 2% low. 5% high, 2 to 5%. So there's going to be some kind of civil war violence. My bet is it won't escalate into a collapse. Just like COVID-19, was that a pandemic? Yes. Did it cause a collapse? No, because it wasn't very lethal. So you got to differentiate the two. But back to your point, I mean, you and I, the reason, the secret to our military success, as you and I know, is because of our training, the realistic exercises we do. And that's what the Collapse Survivor App does. The very first thing right here is simulation. So if you press on that, we run weekly simulations. Now, they're not your digging, fighting holes, running out in the field. They're what we would call command post exercises or tabletop exercises. You get message traffic. So back to your question, what would a civil war be like? Here it is, election civil
war. Oh, you got
war.
it on there.
We've got two of them. We've run two because Trump wins in one and the Democrats win in the other. Now, the first one, and that's what you get. So it's exercise message traffic items. And then periodically you get decisions like there's civil war violence in your area. What do you want to do? Do you want to bug out? How are you going to handle it? So it puts you into a simulation training, a realistic one, especially with the message traffic. I mean, as you know, you really get into this stuff. This runs over 6 days. There's going to be about 80 message items spaced out. You do it when you got the time, and it's real intense. So there's two different types of civil war, and you hit it right. It depends on who wins. If Trump wins, I think you're going to have worse civil war violence. Well, let me do it the other way. If the Democrat wins, Trump loses. Yes, there's going to be a lot of angry Trump people, and I think you will see Texas succeed. But Texas succeed. I actually do. I do.
Really?
Yeah, I've seen the poll data.
Talk to me, Doc, because I mean, you still got to get Austin on board. I mean,
you got to get. All they got to do, and they did it in our scenario. So it happened in our scenario. What happened was the Democrats won, and the Texans said, because there is a big Texit movement, Texit, succession, Texit. There is a very big movement out there. They already cite poll data saying most Texans prefer to leave. Now, you got to be careful with poll data. Sometimes when people answer a poll question, they're not giving you what they really think. They're giving you what they want to send a message about.
Right.
So it could be that's high, that it's less than 50%. But once the Democrats win and people know that that's it, if they take control of the Senate and the House as well, it's game over for a lot of conservatives. And Texas has the easiest case to succeed. Any state can constitutionally succeed because Constitution is silent on succession. But I think Texas will go. So what they'll do is they'll force a referendum. The referendum will pass. And if the governor doesn't cooperate, the governor is going to be in trouble. I think Texas will succeed if the Democrats win because the Constitution is gone. The Constitution is ignored now, and it's just going to get worse and worse and worse if you get another liberal Democrat president and if you get them in the government. So in that case, Texas succeeds. A lot of states, Nebraska, Oklahoma, a lot of the Midwest will go with Texas at that point. But I don't think there'll be a civil war. We have troops and bases in 80 some countries, I think, around the world. Texas is now a country, so Fort Hood can stay right where it is. And I think I'll be honest with you, if Texas succeeds, I'm a Texan now, I'm probably going to apply to be Secretary of Defense, and I'm going to try to negotiate that we stay with the United States military. Because, we don't object to foreign policy. What we object to is violating the 10th Amendment of the Constitution that limits what the federal government can do. They can do military. They can do foreign policy. They just can't do social policy, health things, all those kinds of unconstitutional issues. I'm going to go off too much on a tangent, but let me go back to the other scenario. So let's say now that Trump wins. That was our second Civil War scenario. They're actually where you get more violence. What happens if Trump wins is, yes, and I'll explain why. And again, I don't have to explain it. If you play the scenario, you can experience. What happens is Trump wins, and he's vowing to support a lot of the Constitution that is now ignored, and he's going to limit government, which has been what the Republican Party was supposed to have been about. For all these years. So they're limiting government, and in a lot of rural counties in places like California, Nevada, Illinois, New York, rural counties are not Democrat. Their state government is. The big cities control them. And they're saying, you know what, we love this, but we hate our state government. We're going to start disobeying your laws. And guess what? They've been doing that for years. Second Amendment. If you look at it, most, not some, most county sheriffs in the United States don't follow gun control that they think is unconstitutional. Am I not allowed
Especially
to
here in
talk
New
about
York.
that?
Yeah, well, I'll tell you, it's funny you mentioned that. Here in New York, we have the SAFE Act. And I haven't looked into it in probably a couple of years, but at one point in time, when Lord Commander Cuomo put the SAFE Act into place, there was, for years, there was never a single charge brought against somebody using the SAFE Act. And most of our sheriffs in the state of New York very clearly said, we're not enforcing that. It's
It's like
unconstitutional.
across the country.
But now I want to go back to your app here for a second. So let's go back to the app for a second. Look, folks, we've got Dr. Drew, Dr. Colonel Drew Miller. And remember, as I said before, this is not Dr. Drew that will help you with your PP. This is not that Dr. Drew. This is the other Dr. Drew that will keep you alive. Keep that in mind. And the other one might keep you alive, but it's different. But he's got the apps. It's the Collapse Survivor app. Now, is that app? Is this something we got to pay for? Can I go on to Amazon and grab it, or can I go on to Apple?
You get it on your phone, so you got to go through Apple and or Android. Unfortunately, and a lot
do I pay for it as a subscription?
It's free for 30 days, but you have to subscribe. So you can download it, but you don't get the information alerts unless you subscribe. But it's 99 cents a month after 30 days free. It's dirt cheap. We're not pricing it to make money. We're pricing it because of this, the alerts that we provide,
You got to pay for
and
that.
then the other features, preparedness. And it's just because we got costs. I mean, we've got to put out the threat alerts. We've got to keep the app up and running. And so you can do 99 cents a month, or you can sign up and save a little money, do $10 a year. Well, the $10, I don't get $10. They take $3 right off the top, the phone company. So we get $7. But we have app developers in Canada and India and the US, and we got to pay them and then keep the app going. But it's dirt cheap.
I also want to go back to what you were talking about with the AI for a second. And I know, folks, if we feel like we're all over the place, this is a subject that I very much find interesting. Don't come here. I promise you, I will make you leak. Please don't come here. But one of the things you mentioned was AI and internet. I think that's a war that is, to me, I call it the truly the current silent war. A lot of people don't understand. We have entire Marine units and government units that are dealing with hacking every foreign aid country that we deal with. North Korea, China, Russia. Russia uses, they're criminal organizations. Here, the other countries actually are using their strict military. My personal opinion, outside of what we were talking about with the election coming up, that's a war that's going on every day today. Mm-hmm. Is we're being hacked, we're fighting back against this. Is there anything, I mean, truly, short of, I've got Norton antivirus on my computer, is there anything we can do as day-to-day citizens to prepare for that attack?
Yeah, I think you need to assume, like we do, that you won't have internet. That anything, you should also assume not only do you want to have internet, you should assume you have no electric grid, because it's very easy. I mean, a cyber attack can take down our electric grid. Physical attacks on the key nodes, not a lot of them, can take down the electric grid. Nuclear weapons, even North Korea with their tiny, inaccurate nuclear force can easily take down the U.S. electric grid. Iran may have that capability soon if they don't already. So you have to assume there's no internet, no electricity when you're doing your prepping. You have to make that assumption. And artificial intelligence, it's grossly, I mean, you understand it, Sean. I think most people don't, because when you watch the media, and especially if you're doing movies, the threat from AI that you understand it is bad computers and bad robots. That's not the threat of AI. It could be in the future, but AI is a horribly bad threat now because of bad people using AI to make more deadly viruses, new means to enrich uranium.
What do you mean by that? Hold on, I'm going to pause you for a second now. So you've mentioned that a couple times. What do you mean by using AI to create nuclear devices and to create viruses? What do you mean by that?
Right now, one of the major best uses of artificial intelligence is they're developing new drugs, looking at genetic coding. And so they can say, we can figure out how to solve this disease that humans on their own cannot do. We're not smart enough. They figure out a new way. So they've already got AI using biotechnology. You've heard of CRISPR technology, where you can edit genes. splice in some new gene, and now you've got a super deadly virus. Well, you can use it for good purposes, but as you know, Sean, you cannot name a single technology in human history that has not been misused for bad purposes. Right. So I can absolutely, I'm not telling you, secret intelligence information, but I absolutely guarantee you that Russia, China, probably Al Qaeda, North Korea, definitely, all kinds of countries around the world, bad guys, our enemies, are using artificial intelligence to develop new viruses, new bioweapons to kill us more effectively, new poisons. So they might poison our municipal water system. Right now, with existing poisons, if you're going to poison, I'm near Dallas, if you're going to poison the Dallas water system, I mean, you need tanker trucks full of poison to come in. Right. With artificial intelligence, you have to expect they're going to design some really great new poison we never thought about, and design a new poison, so now it's easier to poison municipal water systems. Enriching uranium, that's a no-brainer. I mean, artificial will get that, intelligence will get that done. Eventually, I think you're going to get to the point where almost any country, a terrorist group, maybe even an individual, a wealthy individual, can develop nuclear weapons. But for viruses, one person can do that. One person can develop a virus now, and with artificial intelligence, getting easier and more capable, it's just easier and easier to use. That's why we have such a high probability of collapse. Again, the collapse probability survival model. By the way, if you go to YouTube and type in probability of collapse model, or go to our channel, go to the Collapse Survivor channel on YouTube, or Rumble, it's on both. And look, we've got a press conference. We just did on that probability of collapse model, and we explain why these probabilities are so high. And I wasn't the only one making the estimates. We had 23 experts updating that model, and it's a wide range. I mean, it's highly uncertain, but it's at least 16% annual chance of collapse is a low estimate. I think it's going to be considerably higher than that. Our high-end estimate was 57%. Likelihood of a collapse every year. And it's just going to keep going up because we keep developing new technologies. Oh, by the way, Sean, there was one, I did a press conference on this at the Rocky Flats former nuclear weapons site near Denver. It's a gloom and doom. So I said, I got to have some uplifting news. So this is my uplifting news. The global warming problem is going to be solved. I don't mean alleviated. I mean just solved. Okay. That's the good news. The bad news is the reason it's going to be solved is when you kill off a few billion people and there's an economic collapse that lasts for years. There's no heavy manufacturing going on. There's no man-made pollution coming out. Global warming is solved.
See, you got that. Look, my wife and I were just watching. I still love Walking Dead. I don't care what anyone says. I love that show. We were just watching that last night, and they were in the characters landed in Greenland. And that was the one person was like, oh, we don't want the world to end. Don't you wish we could go back? And the woman was like, yeah, you don't think that the planet just kind of decided we were done with this and we were done being abused? But I want to stay with what you're saying. So, and look, folks, if you want to know more about what Dr. Drew's got going on, you can check out Fortitude Ranch. You can check out Collapse Survivor app on all your app stores. You can go out now. Can people go? So say, Sean Murphy reaches out and says, "Hey, Doc, I want to get my own homestead better prepared. How do I go about going out and seeing you guys? And is it a training weekend? Am I joining something? What's the process there?"
Well, if you want to learn how to prepare your home, you said your homestead. Fortitude Ranch isn't for you. We're a survival community, so for Fortitude Ranch, you bug out, you leave your home, you come to Fortitude Ranch, we keep you alive in a collapse. But I recognize that, even though we're affordable for the middle class, most people just don't have the money around to join Fortitude Ranch. So that's why you want to go to Collapse Survivor. Not just the app, but we have a website too. So we've got a huge library of information. We post videos there. You ought to send us, some of your prepper episodes. We can post them in our library. So we post all the how-to information for prepping because, again, the goal of Collapse Survivor is to help every good one alive. To me, the worst scenario is this. We've got a horrible collapse. 90% of the population is dead, and the only survivors are, number one, marauders, and worse, the politicians who are sheltered at Mount Weather and Raven Rock and all the other FEMA facilities, because government top officials, they will survive a collapse.
100%.
Your tax dollars are going to take care of them, and I would rather have them not survive than I would have marauders. But I don't want to have good middle-class Americans. That's why we've got Fortitude Ranch, if you could afford a survival community, and the Collapse Survivor app so you can get prepared to survive on your own, because you're not going to get honest information from the government. They want you to believe that government's taking care of you, government knows best, just pay your taxes, and re-elect us, and you'll be perfectly safe and fine. So they publish this absolute lie that H5N1 is low risk when it is going to be a disaster. Biologists say it is inevitable that H5N1 will turn into a human-to-human transmissible virus. And when it does, that's going to be probably the worst collapse, the worst disaster in this history of our species.
Yeah, I've been seeing that on the news. They've kind of been sprinkling it in on the news, like, hey, out in, like, don't quote me on the location, folks. I'm just thinking somewhere, Oklahoma, wherever, whatever. I can reach up. Now, Various Orchid is another Marine. She is absolutely outstanding. She was on the show a couple of weeks ago, folks. Please go check out Various Orchid. She's got bunches of cool stuff going on. She says, "How can we build up funds now to reach that goal?" Which goal are we talking about here? Do you have a payment? Okay, so she's talking about, do you have a payment build-up option where, like, people can pay into it to kind of be involved? How does that work?
Well, again, the Fortitude Ranch app is dirt cheap. You just download it. It's $10 for a year. If you want to join Fortitude Ranch, we have a variety of options. We have a Spartan membership and an RV membership that is very low cost. So you could have a family of 3 people, join Fortitude Ranch for maybe $3,000-$4,000 down payment, and then quarterly dues would be about $1,000 a year. And this is an important point. Fortitude Ranch is not just a survival community. We're a recreational community. So we have these remote areas, and as a member for 2 weeks a year, you can stay at any Fortitude Ranch location for free. So a week from now, I'll be back at Fortitude Ranch, Colorado. It's in the mountains. It's fantastic. If you were to go and you stay there for free up to 2 weeks a year, if you were to go and try to rent a cabin in the Rocky Mountains in Colorado in the summer for a week, you're going to spend more on that rental than you will on your Fortitude Ranch membership. So if you just plan your family vacations around Fortitude Ranch, it is affordable. Now, if you want a luxury membership where you got a bigger room and windows and nicer accommodations, that is more expensive. A family 3 might spend $15,000, $20,000 down, and then $3,000 a year for quarterly dues. But it is middle class affordable.
And Orchid is another. We were both Marines and both railroad conductors at one point in time. She's still on the railroad, so she says she's glitching a little bit on the railroad. But I'm curious now. So I want to stay with the because in a moment here we're getting close towards we almost hitting that hour mark. There's so much in this to unpack. And look, folks, I can't give you all the answers. Hanging out with somebody like Dr. Drew, his other people that he's got that are experts, he'll tell you, guess what? James Bond isn't real, folks. Nobody knows it all. Nobody is secret squirreling it out there and doing everything under the sun. You've got to have some other folks with you. If you can you tell a little bit about the staff, the people that you've got at the ranch, the people that are involved in this?
Yeah, well, we're largely a veteran-owned and operated company. We have 7 locations. 5 are corporate-owned, 2 are franchised. The one in New York is franchised. The one in Southeast Tennessee is franchised. The corporate locations are Texas, Colorado, Wisconsin, Nevada, and West Virginia. So we've got them across the U.S., and with franchising, we plan to be opening up a lot more. I just say if anyone owns or knows someone who owns a remote RV park, that is the perfect location for a Fortitude Ranch. We do RV memberships. An RV park usually has public restroom facilities, you need that. They've got land. They're in a remote area. We don't like to be in cities, understandably. So if anyone knows or someone who has a remote RV location, they ought to open up a Fortitude Ranch location. They've made most of the investment. And so, if you're up in the Catskills, I doubt you get a lot of business during the winter. I could be wrong on that. But, for
most of them are closed.
It's a year-round business. You can focus on your RV stuff in the summer, focus on your Fortitude Ranch work in the winter, but now you've got an extra source of income as an RV park. So we're hoping to get a lot more RV parks and people who just have a great prepper location but have realized they can't do it on their own. They want to become a Fortitude Ranch operation, because our strength is not our staff. The staff is great. We have direction. We keep the place going. Our strength is our members. Every one of our members has weapons. Every one of our members will serve guard duty in a collapse. Every one of our members will have other work to do during a collapse. Kitchen duty, collecting firewood, taking care of the chickens and the sheep and the other animals. And medical. We have medical staff, medical clinics at all our locations. So that's our strength.
Is there rank and structure in all
that?
Yes,
this is it. We have staff with uniform. It's not a volunteer group. Survival communities, a lot of people try them as volunteers. I looked into that when I first decided, because I've been a prepper for a long time, and I figured out one day, you know what? I'm just going to take my family out to our land in Colorado, and if there's a marauder group that's come, we're just going to get slaughtered. We can't defend ourselves as a family. And that's why I figured, we got to have a survival community. And I looked into survival communities. They've been around forever. The problem is the volunteer ones fall apart. You just asked the question, who's the staff? There's just so many decisions you got to make, thousands of decisions, and you just get into arguments over every one of them. So what happens is a volunteer group will get formed, people put together some money, and within a year it usually has fallen apart. And the sad thing is, a lot of times they'll take out a mortgage and go buy property for their bug out location facility, and some poor guy is left holding the mortgage after the group falls. I get emails from them all the time saying, hey, I got a perfect prepper place for you in Illinois. You ought to buy it from us. And because some guy had a volunteer one and they just fell apart. It's just too hard to keep
him and three guys from work were like, dude, we can get together when it all falls apart. We'll be fine, dude. Like, you know how to cook. I know how to barbecue. Joe's got a gun. We'll be fine. It'll be great. Sue knows how to knit. No, I get that completely, because I was curious about the structure side to it, because how we survive in the military is always been rank has its privileges. I'm a gunnery sergeant. I know everyone below an E7 is gonna, when I speak, they're gonna listen. So in a lot of these prepper communities, because they weren't military, they weren't in that world, they were always the guys that, look, them, Dr. Drew. They were the ones that go, dude, I almost joined. I was so close, but my mom said, and we see those guys, and we see them on the internet. The other side to this is, how do you react? And my next question, I got like 1,000 questions for you, Dr. Drew. But I love this. But my other question is how do you react to shows like Doomsday Prepper and whatnot that almost turn into a comical, look at these idiots. They think the world's going to fall apart. How do you react to that?
Well, the logical reason for the asinine, and I'll use the word again, asinine Doomsday Prepper show is the first rule of prepping is, you don't tell anyone you're a prepper. So no one with half a brain was going to go on the Doomsday Prepper show and say, oh, well, look at my house. This is where I hide this. This is where I hide that. The only people they got on their show were not real preppers. They were idiots. And then they made prepping look dumb. And that show really hurt me, because I was founding Fortitude Ranch at the heyday of Doomsday Preppers, trying to raise capital. And I'm not serious. I would go into capital to investment seminars. I would go in and say, I'm Dr. Drew Miller. I'm an Air Force Academy honor graduate, master's degree and PhD from Harvard University, retired Air Force officer and intelligence officer. And I would delay as long as possible. And eventually I had to say the word prepper. And the second I did, it was over. People look at me like, oh my God, what an idiot. But that was 10 years ago. It's not that way anymore. There was Washington Post. Washington Post ran the headline, "The preppers were right." And we were. You have to prepare. If you want to stay alive in today's world, 16 to 57% annual chance of a collapse, you've got to be a prepper. Otherwise, you're not going to make it. Or you could run for Congress, get elected to Congress. You're safe.
I like the idea.
They'll take you to Mount Weather and give you food. You know what else they have at Mount Weather? They have a complete media room because it's so essential that every congressman be able to get on whatever is left of the media and the TV to talk to their constituents, to assure them that they need to reelect them, for the next election. They've got a media room at Mount Weather at your tax dollars paying for their food, their security, and then a media room so they can stay in touch with their constituents and not lose any votes in the next election.
Maybe I got to think about that, Doc. I mean, I might want to sell my business and start running for office. Maybe I got to think about that. And folks, we're getting close to closing the bar up here. Again, if you want to know more about what Doc's got going on, you can look up Dr. Drew Miller, former Air Force colonel, as he said, Harvard PhD graduate. He's got Fortitude Ranch. He's got the Collapse Survivor app. I'm going to take a look at the app here soon after we're done, see what we can do with that. Here's my question, though, because let's talk about the 3 to 5 day oh shit moment. That I need 3 to 5 days between now and if the whole government hasn't collapsed, it's the snowstorm, it's the hurricane, it's the whatever. What are some of the things that you tell folks that you're like, here's your 3 to 5 day essential. If you don't have this, when you get done with the show, go on, get it, make it happen.
I don't agree with the 3 to 5 days. I think it's
not at all.
You have less than 24 hours. It used to be
so
in the prepping world. We used to have the saying 72 hours to animal, meaning that for the first 3 days, people would be okay, but by the third day, they're going to start realizing this is bad. They're going to panic. I think you're going to have, because of your show, Sean, it's your fault, because of your Doomsday Prepper show. Everybody's seen marauding. That Doomsday Prepper show is probably more influential, I think, than Doomsday Preppers, because people have watched that. I used to say, I'm not going to watch Doomsday Preppers. We got real threats. I don't need to talk about zombies.
Right.
But my members kept telling me, says, Drew, you got to watch it. It's about marauders. This is about the marauder threat that, you are.
Yeah, no, I would agree with that.
They're right. And that show has, tens of millions of people have watched it. And I've run into people now who say that my prepping is I plan to maraud. There are people nowadays, that's their prepping plan. They're going to maraud. And there's 1 million gang members in the United States. They're going to take advantage of a collapse in law and order in the first hours. You need to get the help. Sorry, you need to get out within 24 hours. And again, back to this app. That's why we've got these threat alerts, to push out the warning that something bad is happening. You need to leave now. And that's what we tell our members. It's not, I wouldn't wait 3 to 5 days. You need to have a plan.
But what should we have?
And you need to leave within 24 hours.
But what do I need to have? So I got you. Other than, I mean, in my mind, I've got simple food supplies. I've got water. I've got, some form of protection. Not condoms again. I told you it's the wrong Dr. Drew, folks. Some form of self-protection. But as an expert in this field, as somebody who's focused on this, what are some of the things that you say, hey, you should have this, that maybe people don't even think like, oh, crap, I should really have this?
Well, if you're in a city or a suburb, your most important thing is a bug out bag. You need to get out. You don't want to try to ride out a collapse in a city or a big suburb. You need to get to a rural area. If it's not prepared, your odds aren't good, but they're still better than being in a city or a suburb. So you need to have a great bug out bag. And again, if you go to the Collapse Survivor app, there's all kinds of videos and PDFs on what makes a great bug out bag. Excellent. It's best if you got a location to go. Now, if you got an Aunt Martha in Nebraska and she'll take care of you, that's good. But again, we estimate you need at least 50 people to deter marauders. You got to have a lot of guards on duty. At least 50. Our goal is 100 plus at all our locations. We don't want to be attacked. We want to have so many people, so much preparation, they won't mess with us. But you need to have a place to go. But in terms of the equipment, I mean, that would take an hour to cover. Again, if you go to the Collapse Survivor app and the collapsesurvivor.com website, there's all kinds of information there. But it's not something you're going to do overnight. But the key thing is, especially if you're in a city or a suburb, when you get the Collapse Survivor app threat warning that something's happening, get out within 24 hours. If possible, get out in 24 minutes, because the marauding could start in the first couple hours. I think it's going to start because people are aware of it. I do.
God, God, that's a conversation in and of itself.
Not good people, not good people. Not, hey, I'm starving to death, I'm going to start martyrs. Not those kinds of martyrs. 1 million known gang members in the United States. And with our open borders over the past several years,
Right, I'll give you that.
MS-13, you're familiar with MS-13?
Oh, yes.
Brutal
El Salvadorian.
gang. They enjoy killing. People like that are going to
gang.
be taking advantage of the loss of law and order. Because you know what happens? The second a disaster is coming, government declares continuity of government plan. Our priority now for all the police and the military is not protecting Sean. Our priority is protecting the top elected officials. So
Right.
you now have fewer policemen left to answer your call for help. No one is going to answer your call for help. I'd be surprised if they even answer 911 calls. If they do answer the 911 call and you say, hey, there's a marauder moving through my neighborhood, there's not a damn thing they'll be able to do because everyone's calling in. You can get through and there's no police available to go out. You're on your own in a collapse. You're absolutely on your own in a collapse, and law and order could break down in the first 2 hours, not 3 to 5 days. You have to assume law and order will break down quickly, especially in cities and suburbs. Rural areas of, rural states, no, you've got time there. But most of us don't live in those areas. Most people live in cities and big suburbs, and you've got to get out the first day. So you need the Collapse Survivor app for the preparation advice in there, but mainly because you want to get that alert, because we're going to alert you long before the government does to say that, hey, there's something bad happened. We'll give you extra hours or days of warning. So act right away, and you should be ready to go.
Well, my Aunt Eileen says that this is good information. She's in Montana. She is absolutely prepared. She's in the land that God forgot. And look, folks, we've got about 10 minutes left here. If you're just joining us and you got some questions for Dr. Drew, please let us know. Things maybe you're wondering, hey, do iodine tablets work? Yes, they do work. They taste like shit, but they do work. Should I go buy a case of MRE because my neighbor, was a prior service guy and he has them? Do not buy C rations. They're probably bad by now. I don't know though. What do you think, Doc? You think C rations have gone bad by now?
No, I think shelf-stable food, if you keep it in a cool, dry place, will last for decades beyond when it's supposed to expire. Back to Eileen in Montana. Eileen in Montana, yes, she does have 3 to 5 days, probably, although there's a threat for Eileen that a bunch of wannabe marauders, from Omaha, Nebraska, jump in their van on the very first day. And then 8 hours later, they're in Montana and they start marauding. So even in rural areas, you've got people who are going to be fleeing the city. Some of them are bad people. Again, thanks to your fault, Sean. Thanks to your Walking Dead show that you've been promoting on your show.
I love Walking Dead.
You've got millions of Americans now. I don't know if it's millions, but you do have a lot of Americans who've watched that and they've made the decision, my plan is I'm going to start marauding. From the get-go. That's my bug-out location as I go out to that Aunt Martha farm I mentioned in Nebraska, and I take Aunt Martha's farm.
Well, now, Nate has a fair question. I have my answer. I do need your answer here, Doc. Do you have a favorite MRE?
I haven't eaten a lot of them. Again, you're the guy out in the field in the Marine. We have fine defects, dining facilities. I was in Iraq for 13 months. And I swear, I was in Iraq. I ate Alaskan king crab every Friday night. The chow there was incredible. People were gaining weight, the contractors and the chow there. So we actually don't stockpile MREs because they're expensive. We stockpile Pleasant Hills grain. We have grain, we have rice in bags. You can get it from Costco. You got to put it in, containers. But the key thing is if you keep your food, and by the way, go to collapsesurvivor.com. There's a lot of information on storing food. If you keep it in a cool, dry place, it's going to last for decades. And even if I open up something and it's spoiled, it's not a disaster. I'm going to, give it to my chickens to get some food from it. So you can keep food for a really, really long time. MREs are very, very expensive. There's an SOS food bar. There's an SOS food bar that's closer to an MRE. It's not tasty, but it's dense calories. And we stockpile a lot of SOS food lab bars because it's a lot of calories, last a long, long time in a little bit of space. That's kind of our end day food. Our goal is chickens and eggs and sheep and farming and hunting. And that's our goal, is to use as much as that. And then, the rice and pinto beans that we stockpile. But if we have to, if the collapse goes a long time, we'll break into our SOS laboratory bars.
Hey, Nate, for me, it is the four fingers of death, which is the hot dogs, or beef stew. And if you do beef stew, you have to find somebody who has the jalapeno cheese and crackers, and then you mix them together with the Tabasco. It's absolute. I don't care who you are. I could put that in a bowl for somebody if you didn't know what it was, and you would love every bit of it. And it's interesting. So, is there an item then? So you've mentioned a few times about, hey, you need to get to a location, you need to get out of an area, you need to get to somewhere. Is there an item outside of the typical water, food? Is there anything that people would be surprised if that you would be like, hey, you need to own one of these? Like, hey, you need to own an e-tool. And if you don't know what an e-tool is, folks, go look it up. It's a shovel, it's a knife, it's a everything. But is there anything that you would say like, hey, most people don't think they should own one of these, but this is something I think you should own?
A wood stove is what I'd put in. A wood stove is key. We have three operating principles at Fortitude Ranch. Number one is respect Murphy's Law. If anything can go wrong, it will go wrong. Your plane will be late just before you got a podcast. Number two is KISS. Keep it simple, stupid. Anything complex is going to break on you. You have to assume that and you can't get it prepared. And number third is our military principle of adapt. But wood stoves, yeah, we have solar power at Fortitude Ranch. We have propane generators. We've got HF radios. But if they all break, it's okay because we've got what we really need. We've got guns. We've got stockpiled food. We got animals. We got members with weapons and wood stoves. Wood stoves are the best source of energy. So what is the worst? Yeah, great source. You can cook on it, you can heat with it. That's what you really need to stay alive. And I tell people the worst barrier to prepping is the United States government. They are outlawing wood stoves all across the United States. Wood stoves absolutely. Wood stoves are not allowed in Denver and all kinds of cities, even in rural states. Again, we have the problem of the state government is mainly elected by urban people, that the Democratic Party gets to vote for them. And so we want to make our environment cleaner. We're going to outlaw wood stoves. You can't have wood stoves because they make pollution. And so all across, wood stoves are being banned by the government. And it's what you really need to survive in a collapse. Even in Nevada, we've got a location there. It gets 100 degrees in the summer, but it gets cold. It gets cold in the winter. You need wood stoves to cook. You need wood stoves to heat. And like so many other things, the government is the biggest barrier to prepping, outlawing wood stoves. So make sure you got a wood stove. Eileen has one.
I just Googled that. It says uncontrolled, often invisible wood smoke is one of the reasons that in 2016, the EPA banned traditional outdoor wood stove boilers. This ruling was rolled back somewhere in 2022, and the right-leaning U.S. Supreme Court asserted that the EPA oversteps its authority regarding the Clean Air Act. That's interesting.
That was just on burners. I'm talking about wood stoves in a house. They're banned in all kinds of places. And then the regulations on stoning.
This says there's no bans on the stove, but there are tons of regulations in some areas having restrictions on their use. State policies. Some states are considering suing the EPA over wood burning stove standards. These states include, interestingly enough, New York, New Jersey, Illinois, Maryland, Massachusetts, Oregon, Minnesota, Washington, Vermont, and Alaska.
And almost every one of those states, other than Alaska, it's a Democratic Party controls it. Yeah, they love regulations.
Well, Vermont's an interesting one. Hey, I love Vermont. It's like 30 minutes from me. Vermont is the only, not to get into politics yet, we've already gotten into it, but Vermont is the only Republican state that acts like real Republicans anymore to me. Like I love Vermont. Like they've got their governor's like, stay out of my state, don't mess with my people, leave us the hell alone. I love Vermont, and he's a Murphy also, so I got a little bit of a favoritism to him. So Doc, we're getting so close. Do you do any public speaking? I know you mentioned a couple different things. Anywhere, if somebody wanted to listen to like a lecture from you, anybody wanted to say, hey, I want to know more. Obviously, we have the app. Obviously, we have Fortitude Ranch. But I'm saying if somebody wanted to hear one-on-one, Dr. Colonel Drew Miller talk about, hey, this is what I need to do, what could they do?
Well, again, if you go to YouTube and type in Collapse Survivor, that video channel, we're on Rumble too, but if you go to Collapse Survivor on YouTube, Rumble, we put out tons and tons of training videos. Every week after we're done running the simulation on our app, we have a lessons learned podcast. What did you learn from this Civil War scenario? And we have experts on as well. I'm on a lot of times, but other people as well. So really your best thing to do is just go to YouTube or Rumble, type in Collapse Survivor, and then subscribe to the channel. And every time we put out a new video, you'll get a link to that video. And you can learn a lot. And it's pretty educational. And Ryan, our CEO, is pretty good. He makes interesting stuff. Even if I'm doing a boring rant, he'll have some good video he'll put in there, or an intro slide that makes it fun to watch. So we've got some pretty cool videos.
5 days ago, it's a pretty nifty suit you got on there, Doc.
That is our probability of collapse model update. That's at Rocky behind me. That's Rocky Flats nuclear weapons plant used to be there. It's gone. We thought after the Soviet Union fell, that's the end of nuclear war. Everything is going to be peaceful. And our experts estimate that we have a higher risk of nuclear war now than we ever had since World War II. It's a higher risk. I think, and the bad period is coming up from the election through January. This is the time for Russia to use nuclear weapons in Ukraine and against NATO. This is the perfect time for China to invade Taiwan. This is the perfect time for, if any of that happens, it's the perfect time for North Korea to go after South Korea or to attack the U.S. and take down our electric grid. This is going to be a bad period for us coming up. I'm worried less about civil war than I am about China, Russia, Iran, North Korea taking advantage of the divided U.S. to do some really shitty stuff to us overseas, and we could easily be in a nuclear war in the next few months.
Yeah, I hate to say I agree with you on a lot of that, Doc, but
I forgot something else. I got to do one other thing. This is the most important thing you can watch. There's a great documentary called Grid Down, Power Up. Sean, you will love it. Grid Down, Power Up. It explains everything about how vulnerable our electric grid is, and it explains how all these proposals are out there to fix it, and Congress and state legislatures won't do anything because the utility lobby is their biggest donors. The utility lobbyists have bought congressmen, bought state legislators. If you go to Grid Down, Power Up, watch that. It's an award-winning documentary. Every American should watch that. Yeah,
as soon as you said something, it popped right up for me. It's only an hour, folks. As soon as I typed in grid and then the letter D.
Grid Down, Power Up. It's won a lot of awards. It's very professionally done. You'll learn more about the electric grid threats than you'll have no idea how bad it is, how fragile and vulnerable it is.
Well, folks, we got to get ready to close this whole thing down. If you like what Doc's got to say, make sure you're checking out Fortitude Ranch. Make sure you're checking out his app, Collapse Survivor. If you're finding him through us or us through him, as always, make sure you're checking out. Reach out to us through Facebook, LinkedIn, YouTube, Twitter, Twitch, TikTok, Instagram, all those different locations. This is how, look, that like, share, and follow, it may sound cliche, but look, this is how we work. This is how things go. This is how we get things moving. Please make sure you're doing those things for us. Next week, we got Andrew. We want to talk about a left turn from one extreme to the other. Next week is Andre Preparedness. Andre works with people about empathy, how to work through your emotions, how to find out who people are. Dr. Drew and I, we just tell you shut the hell up and go do what you're supposed to do. Andre talks to people and says, hey, let's work through our emotions. Let's work through our feelings. Which, listen, it's not a bad thing. I'm just telling you, Dr. Drew and I were. Dr. Drew's probably closer to that to me. He was in the Air. He's probably like, listen, folks, you'll understand if you were in. This is what we do. But as always, folks, Dr. Drew, don't log off on me afterwards. We got to talk for just half a heartbeat. Make sure you're following us. Make sure you're sharing all these things. Everybody who asks questions, it's always greatly appreciated. As we do in every single episode, Doc, the guest always gets the final word. Don't log off on me. We talk for a minute after this. But what's the final word for the night?
Two things. One, the other reason to like and to follow is otherwise people just like and follow the Kardashians, and that's all the crap you'll get on YouTube because that's what they'll promote. So like and follow so you get good material, not the crap that most people click on. And
Amen.
Then secondly, Sean, I want to say thank you for your service in the Marines. And yes, you did serve a lot harder than I did in the Air Force. I will admit that readily.
Alrighty, folks, be sure to push your stool in.
This has been a Second Front podcast presentation found on Apple, Spotify, and wherever podcasts can be found.